Tonight, we are taking a slow, peaceful walk into the world of football. Not the loud, shouting fan kind of football. Not the big stadium lights, not the yelling coaches, and not the player who pretends his leg is broken just because someone breathed near him. No, tonight, we're going into football's quiet side. Its history, its roots, and the soft story behind the sport we know today. So make yourself comfortable. Lay down, relax your shoulders, and let your mind drift slowly. We're going all the way back, long before the World Cup, long before TV, and even long before shoes looked like shoes. This is the calm story of how the world's most popular game was born. Football today feels like a giant planet. Almost every country loves it, plays it, or at least argues about it. It's the sport where people cry, scream, celebrate, and sometimes fight with strangers who support the opposite team. Billions watch it, millions play it, and every 4 years, the whole world seems to stop spinning just to watch 22 people chase one ball. But here's the funny part. Nobody really knows who invented football. It wasn't one person sitting in their room thinking, let me design the perfect sport. No, football grew slowly, like a story passed from generation to generation. It changed shapes, changed names, changed rules, and kept traveling until it became the beautiful game we know today. To understand where football truly started, we need to step away from the stadium noise and slip into the past, into quiet fields, dusty villages, ancient temples, and old streets where people first started kicking things just for fun. And before we do that, it helps to remember something simple. Humans have always loved playing. Even thousands of years ago, when life was tough and survival was the main job, people still found time to play games. Imagine someone sitting outside a small house thousands of years ago. They're tired from farming or hunting or whatever people did back then. They look down, see a round fruit or maybe a tied-up bunch of leaves, and think, I could kick that. And boom, a very, very, very ancient version of football is born. Of course, that wasn't football as we know it, but the idea, the spirit of the game was already there. A ball, a foot, and a moment of fun. And that's where our story begins. Today, when we think of football, we think of smooth green grass, neat white lines, big nets, and rules that everyone follows. Well, almost everyone. But early football, it wasn't neat at all. It was wild, it was messy, and sometimes it was so chaotic that kings and governments had to step in and say, okay, that's enough. We're banning this game before the whole village destroys itself. But we'll get to that part later. For now, let's stay in this quiet moment and remember that football didn't arrive fully formed. It came from many places, many cultures, many different kinds of ball games. Some were played for fun, some were played for kings, some were played for the gods, and some were played just because people were bored. But before we explore all those ancient games, let's take a small step back and think about the world today. Football is everywhere. You can walk into almost any town, anywhere on Earth, and you'll see kids kicking a ball. If they don't have a ball, they'll make one. Socks, plastic bags, fruit, anything round enough to roll. Because the moment something can be kicked, a game begins. That's the magic of football. It doesn't need anything fancy. You don't need a perfect field. You don't need expensive shoes. You don't even need a proper ball. All you need is something you can kick and someone else who wants to join. And maybe that's why football became the world's favorite sport. It's simple. It's human. It starts easily and spreads naturally. So tonight, we're going to follow this simple idea back through time. We'll go to ancient China, where soldiers kicked leather balls not just for fun, but for training. We'll go to the Mayan world, where a ball game was so sacred that people believed the gods were watching every play. we'll step into ancient Rome, where soldiers played a rough, fast game that helped them stay strong. And then we'll wander through medieval England, where entire towns came together for wild, noisy ball games that had almost no rules at all. Through all these stories, tiny pieces of football appear, different shapes, different styles, different reasons, but all of them carrying the same spark. Humans kicking a ball because it feels good, it feels fun, and for a moment it brings people together. In this first chapter, we're not trying to solve the mystery yet. We're not choosing one inventor. We're simply opening the door to the journey. A journey that will slowly reveal how football formed, piece by piece, century by century. So imagine the world hundreds and thousands of years ago. The air quieter, the land wider, the sky darker without modern lights. People living simpler lives. And somewhere out there, a small group gathers, maybe on a dusty field, maybe on grass, maybe in a courtyard. They place a round object on the ground. Someone takes a few steps back, lifts their foot, and gives it a kick. That kick, simple, harmless, almost childlike, is where it all begins. Football in its earliest forms wasn't about trophies or fame. It wasn't about huge crowds or shouting fans. It wasn't about money, sponsorships, or fancy boots. It was something pure, something joyful, something easy, shared, and human. As you listen to this story, let it move slowly. Let each moment settle. Because football's history isn't a loud one. It's a calm river that flows through ancient worlds, carrying the same idea through time until it finally reaches us. By the end of this journey, you'll see that football wasn't invented by one person, but by many generations who all added their own little touch. It's a puzzle solved over thousands of years. But for now, just relax. You're at the beginning of the story, and there's a long, peaceful road ahead. Before we jump into the ancient football fields of old civilizations, let's slow down for a moment. Let's go back even further. Back to a time before written history, before kingdoms, before rules, before someone even said the word sport. We're going back to the early humans, the people who didn't leave books behind, but definitely left footprints, and probably a few broken fruits they kicked around. If you think about it, humans have always loved to play. Even animals play. Cats chase things, dolphins play with bubbles, and monkeys throw stuff at each other just for jokes. So, of course, humans were going to play too. And honestly, if you look at our history, we've always been a little bored. When no dangerous animal is chasing us and no crops need watering, humans start looking around like, what can I do now? So imagine this quiet moment thousands of years ago. Early humans are sitting around after a long day. No phones, no video games, no Netflix, not even a piece of paper to doodle on. Nothing. Just nature and silence. And maybe a random round object lying on the ground. Maybe it's a fruit. Maybe it's a ball of dried leaves. Maybe it's something made from animal skin. One person nudges it with their foot, another nudges it back, and suddenly the very first game begins. Simple, soft, and totally unplanned. It didn't matter what century it was. Humans had feet, humans had round objects, and humans liked fun. Football, or at least the idea of it, was waiting to happen. But why? Why did humans feel the need to play with balls at all? Well, the answer is actually pretty calm and surprisingly sweet. Humans didn't just survive by being strong, they survived by being social. They talked, they shared, they laughed, they played. Games brought people together. And a simple kicking game? Easy. No equipment needed. No instructions. Just pure fun. But games also served another purpose. They trained the body. They made people stronger, faster, more alert. For early humans, these things weren't just for fitness, they were for survival. A person who could throw better or kick better was probably better at hunting. A person who could run fast in a game could run fast from danger. So even though ancient people weren't thinking, let me practice my dribbling skills so I can impress the village, the games still helped them stay sharp. And because games were social, people invented little rules without even knowing they were inventing games. Someone kicked too hard? The group said, hey, calm down. Someone grabbed the ball with their hands when it was supposed to be kicked? No, only feet. These early mini arguments were the first building blocks of something bigger: rules. Now, let's zoom out a little and look at the world at that time. Before history was written down, before anyone cared about who invented what, people lived everywhere. Africa, Asia, Europe, the Americas, and almost every group created some version of ball games. The more you look into it, the more you realize the idea of kicking something for fun is almost universal. It's human instinct. In some places, the ball was made from plant fibers. In others, animal bladders or hides were used. And I know, the idea of kicking a dried animal bladder doesn't sound very glamorous, but hey, nobody back then had a Nike store. What's interesting is that these games weren't just for fun. Many early ball games had deeper meaning. They were part of celebrations, harvest rituals, or festivals. Sometimes people believed the ball represented the sun, or life, or luck. So kicking it around wasn't just a game. It was a way to honor their beliefs. Imagine this. A group gathers on a field. People form teams. The ball is placed in the center. There may not be a referee, but everyone understands the vibe. They kick the ball, laugh, chase it around, and celebrate. Without knowing it, they are practicing the earliest ancestors of football. No crowds, no trophies, no VAR reviews, just simple joy. And that's something beautiful about these early games. They were unplanned. No one tried to create a sport for the world. They just tried to create moments for themselves. Moments of connection, relief, and fun after long days. If you think about it, football today still has that magic. Sure, it's a huge business now. It's filled with pressure, fame, giant stadiums, and fans who scream so loud the players probably hear it in their dreams. But at its core, it's still just people trying to enjoy something together. It's still a simple game of kicking a ball and sharing a moment. So, before we move into specific cultures, like China, Greece, or the Mayans, it's important to understand this simple truth. Football doesn't have one inventor because the idea behind it was already living inside humans long before history was written down. The heart of the game, running, kicking, laughing, competing gently, was a natural expression of being human. In this chapter, we're not pointing to one place or one inventor. We're looking at the earth as a whole. Everywhere, humans loved motion, loved teamwork, loved challenges, loved joy. That's why so many old cultures created ball games without ever meeting each other. It's almost like the world had this same idea at the same time, just shaped differently, depending on where people lived. Before football had rules, it had a soul. A soft, glowing human soul that came from gatherings, shared laughter, and the warm feeling of being part of something together. Even in the oldest memories of humanity, that feeling is still there. So as we prepare to step into the ancient past, into China's Cuju, Rome's Harpastum, and the Americas' sacred ball games, keep this in mind. Football didn't suddenly appear. It slowly formed like a river collecting water from many streams. It grew from human joy. It grew from human play. It grew from people being people. Now that we've walked through the quiet world before history, it's time to step into the first known chapter of football's real story. And for this part, we're traveling all the way to ancient China, more than 2,300 years ago, during the Han Dynasty. But don't worry, we're not rushing. We're entering slowly, like a soft breeze moving through old wooden gates. Here, in this calm time of history, lived a game called Kuju, a name that literally means kick the ball. Very convenient, right? No mysterious translation, no complicated explanation, just kick the ball. Simple, clean, straight to the point. The ancient Chinese did not come to play. Kuju is the earliest recorded form of football. And when I say recorded, I mean they actually wrote it down on bamboo, silk, or whatever they used back then to take notes. Meanwhile, other cultures were busy kicking balls too, but they didn't exactly keep receipts. So what was Kuju? Picture a quiet courtyard inside a palace. The air is warm, soldiers are standing in formation, the emperor is watching from a shaded balcony. And in the middle of this peaceful scene, a leather ball drops to the ground. Someone kicks it, someone else catches it with their body, and suddenly an organized game begins. Kuju wasn't just a fun little hobby, it was used for military training. If you were a soldier, you had to be fast, coordinated, sharp, and balanced. Kuju helped with all that. You didn't just kick a ball, you trained your whole body. But here's the interesting part. Kuju wasn't chaotic like some ancient games. It actually had rules, clear ones. There was a rectangular field, about the size of a modern school gym. There were goalposts, sometimes made of wood, and there was a net, which looks surprisingly similar to the goal nets we have today. The goal wasn't a big rectangle like modern football. Instead, it was a small round hole at the top of the net. Think of it like trying to score in a basketball hoop, but with your feet, and without a backboard, and without shoes that cost $300. Players had to kick the ball through that tiny target, which made Kuju less chaotic and more skill-based. You couldn't just blast the ball and hope for the best. You needed precision, technique, a calm mind, and very strong legs. Kuju players trained so much that some became famous for their talent. One ancient story talks about a player who could kick the ball so perfectly that he didn't let it touch the ground for a long time, kind of like ancient Chinese freestyle football. If TikTok existed back then, he would have gone viral. But Kuju wasn't just military business. Later, during the Tang and Song dynasties, the game spread to the common people. Streets, parks, courtyards, people played everywhere. And it grew so popular that professional Kuju teams appeared. Yes, real teams, like early versions of football clubs. The Song dynasty especially took Kuju very seriously. They held competitions, hired referees, and even allowed women to play. That's right, women were part of the sport in ancient China long before many modern football cultures allowed it. Imagine walking into a lively marketplace in the Song dynasty. Music playing, merchants shouting, people laughing, kids running, and right in the center, a Kuju match is happening. The crowd is cheering softly. Okay, maybe not softly, but for our bedtime mood, let's imagine softly. The ball used in Kuju evolved too. At first, it was a stuffed leather ball. Then they created a more advanced version with an air-filled bladder inside, basically the great-great-great-grandfather of the modern football. Sure, it wasn't perfectly round, but it was good enough to kick around without making weird shapes. Even the clothing was specific. Players wore light shoes and loose clothing to move freely. No shin guards, no jerseys, no Nike sponsors, just simple gear and pure skill. One thing about Kuju that stands out is how organized it was. Many ancient games were, well, a little wild, but Kuju had structure. This makes historians think of it as the first real football-like sport, not just kicking something around, but playing with intention. The game had clear rules, teamwork, passing, goals, skill-based play, trained players, and crowd entertainment. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? So, did Kuju invent football? Well, not exactly. It inspired later cultures for sure. But the journey from Kuju to modern football wasn't a straight line. The sport didn't travel directly from China to England, at least not as far as we know. But it did set a foundation. It proved that humans were already thinking of structured ball games long before football became official. Still, it's beautiful to imagine ancient players kicking a ball, unaware that their simple game would echo through thousands of years. They didn't know that one day billions would watch a similar sport. They didn't know that the world would one day call football the beautiful game. They just played because it felt good. But like all great things, Kuju eventually declined. Wars, political changes, and social shifts made the game fade away. By the late dynasties, Kuju was more of a memory than a tradition, and eventually, it disappeared. But its spirit didn't. The idea of organized ball games kept living, spreading, transforming. Tonight, as we drift gently through this chapter, imagine that old Chinese field. The wooden goalposts, the round leather ball, the players moving with grace and control, the distant sound of flutes and drums, and the quiet idea forming in the world. A game where you kick a ball and it brings people together. That idea traveled far, and in our next chapters, we'll see how different civilizations carried it in their own way. One day, that idea would grow into the football we know, but for now, let's bow gently to the ancient players of Kuju. They were the early artists of the beautiful game, long before the stadiums, the leagues, and the superstars. Now we leave ancient China behind and drift across oceans, mountains, and jungles, all the way to the ancient lands of Mesoamerica, home of the Olmecs, the Maya, and the Aztecs. This part of the world wasn't just busy building pyramids and studying the stars. They were also playing one of the oldest and most mysterious ball games in history. And trust me, this wasn't your quiet neighborhood match. Oh no, this was a game with noise, drums, crowds, and sometimes a little too much drama. But since this is a bedtime story, we're going to look at it gently, like walking through an old museum at night. This ancient game didn't have a simple name like kickball or football. Different cultures called it different things, but today most people call it the Mesoamerican ball game. Not the most creative name, I know, but it works. What made this ancient sport special? Well, everything. First of all, the ball wasn't soft. It wasn't made of leather or animal skin. It was made of solid rubber. The people of this region were the first in the world to figure out how to make rubber bounce. Everyone else on Earth was kicking bags of leaves, but these people were out here inventing bouncy balls thousands of years early. The courts they played on were huge stone structures, shaped like a capital letter I. Long, narrow, with tall slanted walls on both sides. Imagine playing football inside a giant stone hallway. No grass, no soft field, just stone. Good luck with that first slide tackle. But the game wasn't just a sport. It wasn't who scored the most goals. It was a ritual, a ceremony, a spiritual event that connected people to their gods. And here's where things become extra interesting. In many versions of the game, players weren't allowed to use their hands or feet. Yes, you heard that right. The ball was hit using the hips, shoulders, knees, and elbows. Basically, the ball game version of breakdancing. Imagine trying to hit a heavy rubber ball with your hip while running on stone. Not easy. In fact, players trained for years, building strong bodies and incredible control. These athletes were respected, admired, and sometimes feared. Now, you may be wondering, okay, but what were the rules? Well, the rules changed depending on the region and the time period. Some versions were peaceful games, others not so peaceful. The main idea was simple. Keep the ball moving. Don't let it stop. Don't let it touch the ground. Some versions had stone rings high on the court walls. The rings were tiny. Scoring through one of them was nearly impossible. It was like trying to kick a basketball into a basketball hoop sideways, from far away, using your hip. Basically, if someone scored through the ring, the match was over. They were the hero of the century. The crowd probably screamed, or fainted, or both. But as dramatic as the game was, it held even deeper meaning. For the Maya and Aztecs, the ball game was a symbolic battle between light and darkness, life and death, the earth and the heavens. The bouncing ball represented the sun moving across the sky, and the court? It was the world itself, where the great forces of the universe met in a constant struggle. This is why the game was played during important ceremonies, festivals, and royal events. It wasn't just entertainment. It was a spiritual performance, a living myth. Of course, some stories say that losing teams faced, well, not the best ending. Some matches might have ended with sacrifices to the gods. But before you worry too much, remember, this only happened in very specific ceremonial games. Most games were much more peaceful, more like sports events than dramatic sacrifices. Still, this shows how seriously these civilizations took their ball game. It wasn't casual. It wasn't, let's kick something for fun. It was sacred. Now picture this scene. The sun is bright above a stone court. A crowd gathers around the edges, talking softly. Players step into the court wearing padded belts and arm guards to protect themselves from the flying rubber ball. Drums begin to beat slowly, like a giant heartbeat. The ball is brought out, heavy, solid, bouncing lightly when dropped. A player strikes it with his hip, and the game begins. You can hear the rhythm of the ball as it hits bodies, walls, and floors. The players move with a mixture of power and grace. The crowd watches closely, feeling every moment. It's intense, but in our bedtime version, also kind of peaceful. Like a slow dance between humans, stone, and the sun. This ancient Mesoamerican ball game lasted for thousands of years. It survived the rise and fall of civilizations. It crossed nations, it transformed with time, and eventually it became one of the world's longest-lasting sports traditions. Even today, people in parts of Mexico still play a traditional version of the ancient game, not for sacrifice, not for ceremony, just to keep the tradition alive. And that tradition is important because it shows something beautiful. All around the world, humans were creating ball games that meant more than just fun. These games brought people together. They connected humans to their communities, to their traditions, and even to their gods. Football, the sport we know today, didn't come directly from this ancient game, but the spirit behind it, the magic of gathering, moving, competing, sharing energy, lives inside every sport we play now. If you ever think modern football gets a little crazy, with fans shouting, players acting, and referees looking tired of life, well, let me take you back to the Middle Ages. Because trust me, my friend, compared to what people played back then, today's football is a calm walk in a peaceful park. The Middle Ages gave us many interesting things: castles, knights, strange hairstyles, and a version of football that was basically a mix of chaos, running, yelling, and maybe a little bit of violence. And the best part? People loved it. They treated it like a festival, a wild festival. This chapter is all about mob football, the loud, messy ancestor of the sport we adore today. the village versus the other village. Let's start with the basics. In the Middle Ages, teams were not 11 versus 11 like today. No, no, no. That was too simple. Instead, it was village versus village. Imagine a whole village on one side. Farmers, bakers, blacksmiths, teenagers, old uncles, even that one guy who thinks he knows everything. And on the other side, another village with their own team of random humans ready to defend their honor. The ball, usually made of leather, and sometimes, well, there were rumors of it being made of a pig's bladder. Fun times. The rules? You might think, surely they had some rules. Well, kind of. The rule was basically, get the ball to the other side of the village, any way you can. That's it. No offside, no yellow cards, definitely no VAR. If middle-aged people saw VAR today, they would probably cancel it immediately. The field was everywhere. Literally. Where did they play? Everywhere. Not on a smooth green pitch. They ran through narrow streets, open fields, rivers, mud, someone's garden, someone else's house. Yes, seriously. Sometimes a game could stretch across miles. The ball could disappear somewhere, and 50 men would chase after it like a stampede. Middle-aged people had stamina, real stamina, not gym stamina, chase a ball across the whole town stamina. And because of all this running and yelling, the game often lasted hours, sometimes even the whole day. The crowd was the game. Today, crowds stay in stadium seats. They clap, they cheer, they argue with referees. But back then, the crowd was mixed into the action. If you lived near the field, congratulations, you were part of the match whether you wanted or not. People watching from their windows sometimes had to quickly close their shutters because the mob would suddenly run past their door. And if the ball flew into their house, well, bad luck. The players would run inside to get it. A full medieval football match could look like a parade, except the parade was very confused, very competitive, and very determined. The church was not happy. Now, you can guess that not everyone loved mob football. The church during the Middle Ages had a simple view. Please don't break the town every week. But mob football broke things. Windows shattered, fences fell, market stalls got destroyed, a chicken or two went missing. We don't need details. Because the game was usually played during festivals, the town could turn into a giant mess by evening. Priests complained, mayors complained, people with chickens complained. Still, every year, they played again. The kings who tried to stop it. Now, this part is funny. Many English kings tried to ban the game. Why? Because according to them, the game was distracting men from practicing archery. And at that time, archery was very important for war. Royal orders were published that basically said, stop playing this crazy ball game. Please go practice shooting arrows instead. The bans didn't work at all. People saw the royal announcement, nodded politely, and then played football anyway. Middle-aged people clearly loved this game more than they loved staying out of trouble. Mob football traditions that survive today. Even after hundreds of years, some villages still play traditional mob-style football just once or twice a year. Places like Ashbourne, England, with its Shrovetide football, and Kirkwall, Scotland, with the ball game. These events attract huge crowds, and even though today's version is a little more controlled and less dangerous, the spirit is the same. A giant crowd carrying the ball through the town like a moving wave. It's beautiful in a chaotic way. From chaos to culture. Mob football wasn't just a game, it was part of the community. It was celebration, energy, bonding, and a little bit of madness. People played to release stress, celebrate seasonal festivals, show town spirit, and avoid chores. Very important. In a way, it was the Middle Ages version of entertainment. If you were bored, you didn't scroll your phone, you joined a football mob. The heart of the beautiful game. Now, here's something interesting. even in all this chaos, we can see the early roots of modern football. Teamwork, passing, strategy, chasing the ball with passion, trying to score, the joy of winning, the heartbreak of losing. Under all the noise and craziness, the spirit of football was already there. Mob football wasn't pretty, it wasn't gentle, but it had heart, this same heart football carries today. If you've been following the story so far, you already know that early football was, well, chaos. Beautiful chaos, yes, but still chaos. People running everywhere, no rules, no positions, just vibes. So when the 1800s arrived, the world finally said, okay, that's enough. We need some order. This chapter is all about the moment football began to calm down, put on a clean shirt, comb its hair, and act like a responsible sport. Today's well-behaved version of football didn't appear suddenly. It happened slowly, step by step, one rule at a time. And it all started in schools. The English schools takeover. In the early 19th century, football moved into public schools in England. But let me be clear, when I say public, I mean expensive private boarding schools. The kind where boys wore neat uniforms, walked around politely, and then absolutely fought each other during sports. These schools had a problem. Every school played their own version of football. Every version was different. And every version had rules written by someone's imagination. For example, one school allowed carrying the ball. Another school banned carrying the ball. One school allowed pushing, shoving, and tackling. Another school said, please don't tackle our students, thank you. Some used round balls, some used more oval balls. Imagine trying to arrange a friendly match between schools. It must have sounded like, my school allows running with the ball. Well, my school says that's illegal. Okay, so what are we playing today? It was a mess, but a polite mess. Why they needed rules. Football in schools was fun, but there were problems. Students kept getting injured, teachers kept getting tired of complaints, matches kept ending in arguments, the chaos kept growing. And because boys needed something structured to use their energy, teachers knew they had to fix the system. So they started writing rules. Not to remove the fun, but to reduce the chaos. Just imagine them sitting at a wooden desk thinking, we need to stop these boys from breaking bones every weekend. Let's put some rules. And that is how the oldest versions of football rules were born. The two big styles. In the 1800s, English schools slowly divided into two major groups. One, the handling game schools. These schools allowed players to pick up the ball and run with it. This style eventually evolved into rugby. 2. The kicking game schools. These schools insisted the ball should stay on the ground and be kicked, not carried. This style eventually evolved into modern football. At this point, the two sports were like identical twins who slowly grow into different personalities. Same roots, different attitudes. Rugby became the rough one. Football became the stylish one. The famous Cambridge Rules, 1848. Now we arrive at a very important moment, the Cambridge Rules. In 1848, students from different schools met at Cambridge University. They were tired of arguing over rules every time someone wanted to play, so they did something legendary. They sat together and wrote a list of rules everyone could agree on. A peaceful football negotiation. No shouting, no pushing, just young men with pens and strong opinions. The Cambridge Rules were simple, clear, and surprisingly modern. They introduced things like no handling the ball, same-size teams, boundaries for the field, and a simple way to start and stop the game. These rules didn't immediately take over the country, but they planted a seed, the idea that football could be organized. The rise of clubs. While schools were working on rules, another movement was happening in England. Ordinary people, workers, factory employees, villagers, began forming football clubs. These were not the huge clubs we know today. No stadiums, no locker rooms, no million-dollar players. Just men meeting every weekend to play a game they loved. Football clubs grew fast because it was cheap to play, you didn't need fancy equipment, it was fun, and it brought communities together. As more clubs formed, matches became more regular, and as matches became regular, the need for a universal rulebook became urgent. If every club kept playing using their own rules, people would fight endlessly. So the club said, "We need one set of rules for everyone. Let's organize." The meeting that changed everything, 1863. Representatives from several football clubs met at the Freemasons Tavern in London. Their mission? Create one official rulebook for the entire sport. Picture the scene. A room full of men in suits, papers everywhere, arguments about whether the ball should be carried or not. Tea being served. Someone probably saying, "Gentlemen, please calm down." After long debates, they made a big decision. They banned running with the ball. This moment officially separated football from rugby. The clubs who wanted to keep handling the ball left the meeting and formed their own rugby association later. The rest stayed and formed the Football Association, the FA. This was the birth of modern football. The FA's rules, called the laws of the game, became the foundation of the sport we watch today. Football finally gets its shape. By the late 1800s, football had standard rules, regular matches, official clubs, organized competitions, referees, structure, and much less chaos. The sport had matured. It had transformed from a wild mob of villagers into a gentleman's game, with order and elegance. Of course, players still argued with referees. That part never changed. But finally, football had an identity. By the time we reach this chapter, football has already cleaned itself up a little. The shouting mobs are gone, the random chasing through towns is over. The sport is becoming more structured, more organized, and, believe it or not, more polite. But just when things were starting to look peaceful, something dramatic happened. Football had an identity crisis. It didn't know what it wanted to be. Should players carry the ball? Should they only kick it? Should tackling be allowed? Should matches be gentle or rough? These questions didn't just spark small arguments. They caused a giant split that changed sports forever. And that split gave us the two games we know today, football and rugby. The big argument in the 1800s. Let's imagine a group of men sitting in a room in the 1850s. They're discussing rules, drinking tea, looking serious, and trying their best not to shout. The debate is simple. Team A, we should be allowed to pick up the ball and run. That's fun. Team B, no, the ball should stay on the ground. That's the whole point. And just like that, the sport started to divide. Schools were the main battlefield for this argument. For example, rugby school loved the rough style. Running, carrying, tackling, everything. Eton, Harrow, and Charterhouse preferred kicking. No hands allowed. Very polite. So every school had its own reality. If you visited rugby school, you'd think, this sport is basically wrestling with a ball. But if you went to Eton, you'd think, this is football, the peaceful kicking game. The confusion was real. The turning point, 1863. Now we arrive at one of the most important moments in the history of sports. In 1863, club representatives met in London to finalize a proper rule book for the sport. They wanted to create order. They wanted one single version of football. But the same old argument returned. Should players be allowed to run with the ball? People debated, voices got louder, a few eyebrows were raised. You can imagine someone saying, "Gentlemen, please behave." And then, finally, a vote was taken. And the decision was, no more carrying the ball, ever. This was a peaceful vote, but the consequences were huge. The clubs who loved carrying the ball were not happy. They stood up, packed their papers, said, "Good day," and left the meeting. Those clubs would later form the foundation of rugby. The clubs who stayed behind became the Football Association, the creators of the modern rules of football. That moment was the official breakup. Football and rugby became two different sports, never to merge again. Why the split was necessary? You might wonder, why couldn't they just keep both styles? Well, imagine trying to play a match where half the players are carrying the ball and the other half are shouting, "Hey, that's illegal." It would be pure madness. For the sport to grow, it needed clarity. Football chose the kicking path, rugby chose the carrying path. Both games developed their own rules, their own identity, their own culture. And honestly, the split was good. Rugby became the tough one. After the split, rugby became the sport of tackles, scrums, mud, strong players, heroic dives, and slightly broken noses. It was rough, raw, and physically demanding. People loved it. Rugby players were proud of their toughness. They looked at football and probably said, "Ah yes, the gentle game." Meanwhile, football became the global favorite. Football focused on kicking, dribbling, passing, teamwork, speed, and style. No carrying the ball, no tackling like a bear, just clean footwork. Football began to spread faster than anyone expected because it was easy to play. You needed very little equipment. It didn't require huge, strong bodies. Anyone could join the game. Kids loved it, adults loved it, entire communities loved it. Football became the smooth, elegant sibling. Rugby became the strong, loud sibling. Both were great, just different. Did people fight about the split? Of course they did. Even after the rule change, some clubs kept arguing. Football without carrying the ball? That's boring. No, you're boring. But eventually, everyone accepted their fate. The two sports kept growing separately, and both became successful. It's a bit like watching two brothers take different paths in life. One becomes the artist, one becomes the bodybuilder. Both are proud, both are talented, both are doing their thing. Fun fact, rugby actually helped spread football. Here's something surprising. When football and rugby separated, people finally understood what football actually was. It now had clear rules, clear identity, clear structure. For the first time in history, people said, yes, this is football. This is the sport we love. Without the split, the confusion might have continued for many more years. Football might never have become the global giant it is today. Sometimes breaking apart leads to a better future. How this split shaped the modern game. After 1863, football developed fast. Teams became more organized, competitions became standard, referees had actual rulebooks, matches had structure, clubs grew stronger, fans grew louder. And as football became more disciplined, it opened the door for something even bigger: professional football. By now, football has finally calmed down. No more mobs running through towns, no more villages trying to destroy each other. The rules are written, the hands or no hands debate is settled, and the game has a clear identity. But there's one big problem left. People needed places to play regularly. That's where football clubs enter the story. This chapter is about the first football clubs, how they formed, who played in them, and how they transformed football from a school pastime into a community sport loved by everyone. The gentleman's game. In the late 1800s, football was mostly played by upper-class gentlemen. These were men who had free time, money, and access to fields. They played for fun, prestige, and sometimes to show off their style. The first football clubs weren't stadium-filling, ticket-selling businesses. They were small groups of friends or classmates who decided, hey, we like this kicking game. Let's do it every weekend. And that simple idea changed everything. The first clubs appear. The first football clubs appeared in England. Some of the earliest ones were Sheffield FC, founded in 1857, officially the world's first football club. Cambridge University AFC, influential in spreading the rules. Notts County FC, 1862, one of the oldest professional clubs. These clubs were crucial because they began organizing matches, keeping records, and standardizing rules. Instead of playing random games whenever people felt like it, football now had regular teams, schedules, and competitions. Imagine a quiet Saturday in England. A small group of men walks onto a grassy field, leather ball in hand. They're wearing simple shirts and shorts, maybe even some fancy boots. No huge stadium, no screaming fans, just football. And yet, something magical is happening. This is the start of something bigger. From gentlemen to workers. At first, football clubs were exclusive. Only rich men and school graduates could join. But soon, the Industrial Revolution changed society. Workers in factories, mines, and ports started playing too. They loved the sport just as much, even if they didn't have fancy uniforms or free weekends. Football clubs began to pop up in towns, not just schools. Communities started forming their own teams, and with that, football became a game for everyone, not just the elite. Some clubs were started by churches, others by factories, some by ordinary townspeople who simply loved to kick a ball on Sundays. This is why football grew so fast. It didn't require wealth, status, or permission. If you could kick, you could play. The first organized competitions. As clubs multiplied, the next step was obvious: competitions. The first football leagues and tournaments were small. Local clubs challenged each other, often for prizes like cups, medals, or just bragging rights. Even without money or fame, these matches were serious. People trained hard, planned strategies, and celebrated victories like kings and queens. One famous example is the FA Cup, first played in 1871. It's still running today and is one of the oldest football competitions in the world. Imagine being there at the first match. Muddy fields, leather balls, no referees with whistles, and yet the excitement was real. Competitions gave football structure. They created regular schedules, team rankings, and a sense of identity. Teams weren't just a group of friends anymore. They represented towns, schools, or factories. Football began to unite communities. Football clubs did more than provide entertainment. They brought people together. Villagers cheered for their team on Sundays. Workers felt pride when their team won. Schools and universities used football to teach discipline and teamwork. In small towns, the football club often became the heart of the community. Matches were social events, almost like mini festivals. People didn't just watch the game, they celebrated their identity, culture, and connections. And this is why football spread so quickly across England. It wasn't just a sport, it was a community magic. The spirit of early football clubs. Early clubs weren't about money, fame, or sponsorships. They were about friendship, fun, pride, skill, and competition. Players trained to improve themselves, but they also played for the joy of the game. The spirit of these clubs is something modern football still holds, even with huge stadiums and millions of fans. Even today, if you walk into a local club in England, South America, or Africa, you can see the same spirit. People just enjoying football, building friendships, and celebrating community. Fun fact: Sheffield FC and the first rules. Sheffield FC, the first football club, also helped write early club-specific rules in 1858. These Sheffield rules included throw-ins for the ball going out of bounds, no hacking or tripping, corner kicks. Yes, invented by Sheffield. Many of these rules influenced the modern laws of the game. Without Sheffield FC, football might not have had the same structure we know today. So when you see a corner kick in a match now, you can quietly thank some gentlemen from Sheffield who kicked a ball over 160 years ago. By the late 19th century, football in England had grown up. Clubs were organized, competitions were exciting, and rules were clear. But football wasn't going to stay in England forever. Oh no, it was ready to travel, explore, and take over the world. This chapter is all about how football spread from England to other countries, slowly at first, then explosively, until it became the global phenomenon we know today. The first travelers. How does a sport leave its home country? Simple: through people. English workers, sailors, students, and teachers began traveling for work, study, or adventure, and wherever they went, they brought a leather ball with them. Sometimes it was a small ball tucked under an arm. Sometimes it was a full-size ball carried by a group of excited men. British sailors played football at ports around Europe and South America. English teachers introduced the game in schools abroad. Factory owners shared it with workers in other countries. Football traveled quietly at first, almost like a whisper. Hey, try this game, it's fun. And soon, people everywhere were intrigued. Football in Europe. Europe was one of the first places to pick up the game. Scotland and Wales adopted it almost immediately. Italy, Spain, and France sought English workers and students playing in the late 1900s. They were fascinated by the game. Local clubs started forming in cities. Soon, matches were held with small crowds cheering quietly at first. It didn't take long for national competitions to appear. By the early 20th century, countries like Italy and Spain had leagues similar to England. And just like in England, football brought communities together. Football in South America. South America has a special story in the spread of football. English immigrants and sailors introduced the game in countries like Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Chile. Local people loved it, but South Americans added their own style, rhythm, and creativity. Where England's game was structured and formal, South America's game became fluid and playful. Fancy dribbling, fast passes, elegant footwork, they transformed football into an art form. And today, countries like Brazil are famous for this magical style, called samba football. Football in Africa and Asia. English colonial influence helped spread football to Africa and Asia. In Africa, football clubs were formed in towns and cities. It became a game of community pride. In Asia, English teachers and missionaries introduced the sport to schools. Despite different cultures and climates, football was easy to adopt. All you needed was a ball, a field, and some people willing to play. Simple, universal, human. The first international matches. Once football traveled around the world, people started asking, can we play against each other? The first official international match happened in 1872 between Scotland and England. It ended 0-0. Quiet score, but historic. People realized football could connect nations. Soon, other countries began playing friendlies. Football wasn't just a local pastime anymore. It was becoming international culture. The birth of FIFA, 1904. By the early 1900s, football's growth created a new problem. Too many rules, too many interpretations. Different countries played slightly differently. Something had to bring order. So, in 1904, representatives from France, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland met in Paris and founded FIFA, Fédération Internationale de Football Association. FIFA's mission? Unite the world under one set of football rules. It worked, slowly at first, then faster and faster. Football was now a truly global sport. Football goes professional. As football traveled, it also became more professional. Clubs offered small payments to players, leagues became organized, and stadiums were built. England had professional leagues by the 1880s. Other countries soon followed. Football became not just fun, it became a career, a way for talented players to shine. And with professionalism came media attention. Newspapers began reporting matches, people talked about scores, and fans grew loyal. The global appeal of football. Why did football spread so quickly across continents? There are a few reasons. Simplicity, you only need a ball. Accessibility, anyone can play, young, old, rich, poor, skilled, or not. Excitement, quick goals, teamwork, and strategies made it thrilling. Community, clubs connected people, built pride, and created belonging. Football became more than a game. it became a language everyone understood, a universal rhythm across borders. Fun fact: football and culture. In every country, football adapted to local culture. In Italy, it became tactical and strategic. In Brazil, it became fast, creative, and joyful. In England, it stayed organized and structured. In Africa, it became a tool for community pride and social gatherings. No matter where it went, football kept its soul. A game for people, by people. By the early 20th century, football had traveled far, from muddy fields in England to sunny streets in Brazil. From schoolyards in Europe to markets in Africa, the game had found hearts everywhere. But something big was about to happen, something that would turn football into a truly global celebration. This chapter is about the first FIFA World Cup and how football became a sport that the whole world could watch, cheer for, and dream about. FIFA's big idea. By the 1920s, FIFA had been organizing football internationally for 2 decades. Friendly matches and regional tournaments were fun, but the leaders wanted something grand, a global competition. In 1928, FIFA decided, let's organize a world championship. Let's see who is the best team on Earth. And with that, the idea of the FIFA World Cup was born. The first World Cup, Uruguay 1930. The first tournament was held in Uruguay in 1930. Why Uruguay? Well, the country had just celebrated its 100th anniversary of independence, and football was very popular there. Plus, Uruguay's national team had won 2 gold medals in football. They were ready to host the world. Teams from all over the world were invited, but travel wasn't easy in 1930. Airplanes were rare and expensive, so most teams traveled by ship, sometimes for weeks. Imagine being a player on a long sea journey, dreaming about kicking a ball in a foreign land. 13 teams accepted the invitation, 7 from South America, 4 from Europe, and 2 from North America. The tournament. The World Cup lasted about a month. The stadiums were small by today's standards, but they were packed with fans who were excited, nervous, and curious. Football had never felt this important before. The tournament had a knockout format. Teams played hard, gave everything, and the energy was electric. Even without TV broadcasts or social media, people were captivated. They read about matches in newspapers, listened on the radio, and talked endlessly about goals, players, and tactics. Uruguay won. In the final, Uruguay defeated Argentina 4-2 in front of a roaring crowd. The Uruguayan players were national heroes. Streets were full of celebration. Flags waved. Music played. Football had officially conquered hearts on a global scale. For the first time, a team had claimed the title of world champion, and the World Cup became a symbol of unity, competition, and national pride. Football as a global phenomenon. The 1930 World Cup proved that football wasn't just a European or English game anymore. It was universal. People everywhere could play it, watch it, and celebrate it. The World Cup also showed that football could connect nations peacefully. Countries that might not have ever interacted before now competed in a friendly contest of skill, speed, and teamwork. Football was becoming more than a sport. It was culture, identity, and pride. It was a language understood by millions. Growth after 1930. After the first World Cup, FIFA continued organizing the tournament every 4 years, except during World War II. Teams, stadiums, and fans grew bigger with each edition. Football's reach expanded to Asia, Africa, and beyond. Television, radio, and newspapers helped spread the excitement even further. People who couldn't travel to matches could still feel part of the global celebration. Football had truly become the world's game. The magic of the World Cup. What makes the World Cup special is not just the competition, it's the stories. Underdog teams surprising the favorites, legendary players scoring unforgettable goals, fans traveling across continents to support their nations, entire countries uniting behind their teams. It's a mix of skill, emotion, history, and culture that no other sport can match. And it all started with a simple idea: kick a ball, have fun, and bring people together. Fun fact: the first World Cup ball. The ball used in 1930 wasn't fancy. It was made of leather, stitched together, and sometimes absorbed water if it rained, becoming heavy. Players needed strength, skill, and endurance to play. Yet despite its simplicity, that ball carried the dreams of nations and the first sparks of football legends. Football's heartbeat around the world. The World Cup also showed that football could inspire communities. People who played football in small towns dreamed of playing on the world stage. Kids who kicked balls in schoolyards imagined representing their countries. Football's magic wasn't just on the field, it was in the hearts of people who watched, played, and believed. And that magic continues today. Now that football has traveled the world and the first World Cup has taken place, it's time to meet the heroes, the players who turned the beautiful game into something unforgettable. These are the legends who made fans cheer, rivals tremble, and kids everywhere dream of becoming just like them. In this chapter, we'll explore some of these players, their skills, and the magic they brought to football. And don't worry, we'll keep it chill, like telling a bedtime story about stars that shine on the pitch. The first superstars, early 20th century. Even before the World Cup, certain players became famous in their countries. They weren't just good, they were inspiring. Arthur Friedenreich in Brazil, known as the Tiger, he was one of the first stars to combine speed, skill, and creativity. He inspired Brazil's love affair with football. José Nazasi in Uruguay, the captain of Uruguay's 1930 World Cup winning team, strong, disciplined, and a leader on and off the field. Giuseppe Meazza in Italy, Italy's first football hero, known for his clever footwork and goal-scoring ability. These players were pioneers. They showed the world that football was not just about rules or winning, it was about style, creativity, and passion. Why legendary players matter? You might wonder, why focus on individuals? Isn't football a team sport? Absolutely. Football is a team sport. But legendary players do something special. They inspire teams to be better. They make matches exciting. They give fans someone to cheer for. They create moments that last forever. Even today, young players study their techniques, hoping to recreate the magic. The magic of Maradona. No discussion of legendary players is complete without Diego Maradona. Maradona was more than a player. He was a living story on the pitch. Small in size, but enormous in skill and confidence. He could dribble past entire teams like they were standing still. The 1986 World Cup in Mexico is where Maradona became immortal. 2 goals in the quarterfinal against England made history. The hand of God, controversial, cheeky, unforgettable. The goal of the century, a breathtaking solo run that left everyone amazed. Maradona showed the world that football was a mix of talent, daring, and personality. Pelé, the king of football. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, another legend was rising. Pelé, from Brazil. Pelé was everything a footballer dreams to be: fast, skillful, smart, and humble. By the age of 17, he played in the World Cup and scored goals that made the world take notice. He won 3 World Cups, 1958, 1962, and 1970, a record that still stands. Pelé didn't just win games, he created hope for a nation, inspiring millions of young players to pick up a ball and dream. Other heroes of the game. The list of legendary players is long, but each contributed in a unique way. Johan Cruyff, from the Netherlands, master of total football, where players could switch positions fluidly. Cruyff brought elegance and intelligence to the game. Zinedine Zidane, from France, grace, vision, and unforgettable goals in the 1998 World Cup. Lionel Messi, from Argentina, magic with the ball, incredible consistency, and a lifelong passion for football. Cristiano Ronaldo, from Portugal,
strength, speed, and goal-scoring ability that makes fans hold their breath. Each player left a mark on the game, shaping the way football is played, watched, and loved today. What makes a legend? So, what makes a player legendary? It's not just goals or trophies. It's a combination of skill, mastery of the ball, control and creativity, vision, seeing plays before they happen, passion, playing with heart, giving everything for the team, inspiration, making fans and teammates dream bigger, personality, charisma, and individuality that make them unforgettable. Legends show us that football is more than a game. It's poetry in motion, a story unfolding with every pass, shot, and goal. Football and fans. Legendary players also transform how fans experience football. When Maradona, Pelé, or Messi play, fans don't just watch, they feel. Young kids pretend to be them on streets, beaches, and schoolyards. Entire nations unite behind their teams. Football becomes a shared emotion, a connection between players and people. This is part of why football is called the beautiful game, because it's not just about winning, it's about magic, joy, and memories. The legacy of legendary players. Even after retirement, legendary players continue to inspire. They coach young talent, they promote the sport globally, they appear in media and events. They remind everyone why football matters. In other words, football isn't just about the 90 minutes on the field. It's about lifelong influence, changing lives, communities, and even countries.
By now, football has traveled the world, created legends, and started uniting countries. But the 20th century brought something entirely new. Modern football, with big competitions, media attention, and players who became global icons. This chapter is about how football evolved into the modern spectacle we see today, loved by billions around the world. The rise of professional leagues. After the World Cup and the growth of clubs, football became more organized and professional. England had professional leagues as early as the 1880s. Other European countries soon followed. Italy, Spain, and Germany developed strong leagues, complete with schedules, standings, and official competitions. South America saw its leagues flourish, with Brazil and Argentina producing world-class talent. Professional leagues meant players could focus entirely on football, train harder, and improve their skills. The game became faster, more tactical, and more exciting. Fans started following teams regularly, building loyalty. Every weekend brought matches, goals, and celebrations. Football was no longer just a pastime, it was a lifestyle. Global competitions grew. The FIFA World Cup continued to grow, becoming the ultimate football event. Every 4 years, nations prepared to showcase their best players. The tournament became a symbol of pride, unity, and competition. Other international competitions also emerged. UEFA European Championship 1958, Europe's Continental Championship, Copa America, South America's national team tournament, Olympic football, once the main international event, still prestigious. Club competitions grew too. UEFA Champions League, European clubs competing for continental glory, Copa Libertadores, South American clubs competing for regional pride. Football wasn't just local anymore. It had become global entertainment, with millions watching matches from continents away. Media transformed football. One of the biggest changes in modern football came from media. Radio broadcasts allowed fans to follow matches live, even if they couldn't be there. Newspapers reported scores, player news, and game stories. Television revolutionized everything, showing matches in vivid color with commentary, replays, and analysis. Suddenly, football stars were everywhere. Kids could watch them play, imitate their moves, and dream of becoming the next hero. Fans in Asia, Africa, and the Americas could follow European matches as if they were happening in their own backyard. Media didn't just show football, it created culture. Songs, chants, merchandise, and even fashion were influenced by players and clubs. Football became a lifestyle. Famous clubs, famous fans.
Some clubs became global brands. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, Juventus, and Bayern Munich were no longer just local teams. They represented history, style, and excellence. Fans became loyal, passionate, and creative. Chants, banners, and stadium traditions turned football matches into experiences, not just games. Football fandom became a shared identity across generations. The beautiful game now had rituals, passion, and emotion that transcended borders. Modern legends. Alongside professional leagues and global competitions came modern legendary players. Pelé and Maradona, already discussed, their influence continued. Zinedine Zidane, elegance, vision, and leadership for France. Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, the modern titans of skill, dedication, and goal scoring. Martha, a global icon in women's football, inspiring millions. These players showed the world that football is art, science, and human story all rolled into 90 minutes. Women's football rises. For much of history, football was male-dominated, but in the modern era, women's football has grown tremendously. The FIFA Women's World Cup started in 1991. National teams from the USA, Germany, Japan, and Brazil became dominant forces. Female players became icons, inspiring young girls to pick up the ball. Women's football has added new stories, skill, and excitement to the global game, making it even more inclusive. Football as global culture. Modern football is more than matches. It's culture, economy, and emotion. Countries unite behind national teams, cities live and breathe club rivalries, fans celebrate victories, mourn losses, and bond over the game. It's no longer just a sport, it's a global heartbeat connecting millions of people regardless of language, religion, or nationality. Interesting fact, football and technology. Modern football uses technology like never before. Goal line technology ensures fairness. VAR, video assistant referee, helps referees make better decisions. Social media spreads news instantly. Even with these modern tools, the heart of football remains the same. People kicking a ball, enjoying teamwork, and celebrating joy.
By now, football is no longer just a game. It's everywhere, on streets, in schools, in stadiums, on television, and even in conversations over coffee. Football has grown beyond rules, goals, and trophies. It has become culture itself, shaping communities, identities, and even politics. This chapter is about how football has influenced the world far beyond the pitch. Football as a community glue. One of the most magical things about football is its ability to bring people together. In small towns, the local club often serves as the heartbeat of the community. In big cities, football teams create a shared identity for neighborhoods, classes, or regions. Fans sing the same chants, wave the same flags, and celebrate victories as a collective. Think about it. A simple ball can connect people across ages, professions, and social classes. A match can transform strangers into a family for 90 minutes, all cheering, laughing, and dreaming together. Football and national identity. Football has always been closely tied to national pride. Uruguay in 1930 celebrated their World Cup win as a symbol of independence and strength. Brazil's football successes became part of its national identity, inspiring joy and unity across the country. England, Germany, Argentina, France, and Italy all have national narratives intertwined with football. In many countries, a victory is more than just a game. It's a moment of collective celebration, a shared story that becomes part of history. Rivalries that define culture. Football rivalries often reflect more than sport. They capture history, class, and geography. Barcelona versus Real Madrid, Catalan pride versus Central Spanish identity, Celtic versus Rangers, religion, politics, and local identity in Glasgow, Boca Juniors versus River Plate, working class versus more affluent neighborhoods in Buenos Aires. These rivalries are fierce, but also deeply cultural. Football gives people a way to express loyalty,
heritage, and belonging, safely and joyfully. Football and social change. Football has also become a platform for social movements and change. Campaigns against racism, sexism, and equality often use football's visibility to reach millions. Players have become voices of influence, speaking out on important issues. Clubs and federations promote social programs, youth training, and community engagement. The sport shows that football is not just entertainment, it's a tool for positive impact. Global festivals of football. Events like the FIFA World Cup or continental tournaments have become global festivals, not just competitions. Millions of fans travel across countries, sharing traditions, foods, and songs. Cities host fans from all over the world, celebrating diversity. Even people who aren't hardcore fans join in, captivated by the excitement. Football has become a language everyone understands, breaking cultural barriers and connecting people across borders. Football in art, music, and media. Football has influenced art, music, and media like no other sport. Songs, chants, and anthems celebrate teams and players. Movies, documentaries, and books tell legendary stories of matches and players. Advertisements, murals, and street art use football to express culture, creativity, and identity. It's everywhere. You don't just watch football, you experience it. It shapes fashion, language, and even humor. Fun fact: street football. In many parts of the world, football is not just a stadium sport. It's a way of life on the streets. Kids in Rio, Lagos, or Naples play with makeshift balls, dreaming of World Cup glory. Street football emphasizes creativity, quick thinking, and flair, often influencing professional players later. It shows that football doesn't need fancy stadiums or equipment, just passion and a ball. Street football is the heart of the game, the place where magic is born. Football as a cultural mirror. Football reflects society, values, and history. Teams often represent communities, cities, or nations. Fans' reactions mirror societal moods, emotions, and pride. Legendary moments in football often inspire poetry, storytelling, and cultural memory. The beautiful game becomes more than sport. It's a living mirror of humanity, showing creativity, resilience, and joy. By the 21st century, football had become not just a sport, but a massive global industry. Players earned millions, stadiums were packed with fans, and media coverage was everywhere. Yet, despite all the money and fame, football somehow kept its heart, the joy of kicking a ball, teamwork, and the thrill of the game. This chapter explores the economics of football, how money, media, and fame shaped the modern game, and why the sport continues to inspire billions. Money changes the game. Once football went professional, money quickly became a factor. Clubs needed funds to pay players, maintain stadiums, and organize leagues. Sponsorships and ticket sales became essential. Merchandising, jerseys, scarves, hats, added extra income and allowed fans to feel closer to their teams. Some clubs grew into global brands, like Manchester United, Barcelona, and Real Madrid. Their names now carry value beyond sport, generating revenue from everywhere in the world. Money allowed clubs to attract the best players, improve training, and create world-class stadiums. But it also introduced new pressures, expectations to win, invest wisely, and keep fans happy. Media's massive role. Media transformed football from a sport to a global spectacle. Television broadcasts brought matches to millions of homes, making stars out of players overnight. Streaming platforms now allow fans anywhere to watch games live, often with commentary in their own language. Social media connects players with fans directly, making legends even more personal. Media coverage not only entertains, but drives revenue. Ads, sponsorships, and broadcasting rights became huge sources of income for leagues and clubs. A single match could generate millions of dollars just from TV deals. The rise of player fame. With money and media, footballers became superstars. Names like Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Neymar, and Kylian Mbappé are known worldwide, not just in their home countries. Players now influence fashion, lifestyle, and even politics. They appear in commercials, social campaigns, and charity events. Yet, despite the fame, the best players remain focused on football, keeping the game's magic alive. It's a delicate balance between celebrity and sport, and some handle it brilliantly. Transfers and global markets. One of the most fascinating modern developments is the transfer market. Clubs buy and sell players for enormous sums. The record transfer fees can reach over 100 million euros for a single player. Transfers allow clubs to compete globally, attract talent, and stay relevant. Fans often debate transfers passionately, as if it were a national drama. Transfers also show football's global reach. A player from South America can star in Europe, Asia, or the Middle East, connecting fans across continents. Women's football and economics. Women's football has grown enormously in recent years. The Women's World Cup now attracts millions of viewers worldwide. Sponsorship deals and league investments are increasing. Female players are becoming stars, inspiring young girls and changing cultural perceptions. The economics of women's football is still growing, but it demonstrates that football's magic is for everyone, regardless of gender. Balancing money and the soul of football. Here's the tricky part. Money is important, but football's heart cannot be bought. Fans still love the game for community, passion, and excitement. Young kids still play on streets, fields, and schools, dreaming of scoring the next big goal. Legendary players still inspire not because of wealth, but because of skill, creativity, and dedication. It's a delicate balance between celebrity and sport, and some handle it brilliantly. Fun fact: football sponsorships. The first football sponsorships were modest, local companies printing their names on shirts. Now clubs have global sponsors, from airlines to tech giants, contributing millions per season. Yet, despite all the logos, the game remains about the ball and the players. Money, media, and fame amplify football, but they don't replace the core joy that started in villages, schools, and small fields over 150 years ago. Football as a global business. Modern football is an ecosystem. Clubs generate revenue through tickets, merchandise, and media deals. Players attract sponsorships and endorsements. Leagues and tournaments organize competitions that attract millions of viewers. Fans provide the heart, energy, and loyalty that sustain it all. It's a complex dance of money and passion, yet somehow it still feels like a simple game. At its core, people chasing a ball, scoring goals, and celebrating together.
We've come a long way, haven't we? From chaotic mobs in English villages to global stadiums, legendary players, and billion-dollar clubs. Football has traveled the world, inspired generations, and become part of our culture. But what about the future? Where is the beautiful game headed next? This chapter explores the future of football, the role of technology, its global expansion, and how the next generation of players and fans will shape the sport. Technology and football. Technology is changing football in ways early players could never imagine. VAR, or Video Assistant Referee, helps referees make fairer decisions. No more missed goals or unfair penalties. Goal line technology ensures every goal is counted accurately. Wearable tech tracks player fitness, heart rate, and movement, helping teams train smarter. Virtual reality, or VR, and augmented reality, or AR, are being explored for training, fan experiences, and immersive broadcasts. Despite all these changes, the essence of the game remains: skill, teamwork, and the thrill of a goal. Technology is just helping make football fairer, safer, and more exciting. Global expansion. Football's global reach is stronger than ever. Leagues in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa are growing rapidly. International tournaments now feature teams from more countries, making competitions more diverse. Football academies are spreading worldwide, training young talent and giving kids dreams of stardom. The next generation will grow up with football as a truly global game, where cultures mix, styles evolve, and fans connect across continents instantly. Women's football, the rising force. The future of football cannot ignore women's football, which is experiencing an incredible surge. TV coverage and sponsorships are increasing, giving women players more visibility. The FIFA Women's World Cup is now one of the most watched football events in the world. Young girls everywhere are inspired to play, compete, and dream of becoming legends. Women's football is not just catching up, it's shaping the sport's future, adding new stories, talent, and excitement. Youth and the next generation. The heart of football has always been kids kicking a ball in the street or park. The next generation will continue this tradition. Digital platforms allow young players to share highlights, learn skills, and connect with coaches globally. Youth academies are more advanced than ever, combining education, fitness, and skill development. Fans from birth grow up immersed in football culture, making the sport even more passionate and creative. The next generation will likely invent new styles of play, just like South American flair or European tactics did decades ago. Football will continue to evolve, keeping the game alive and fresh. Sustainability and football. The future also requires football to be responsible. Eco-friendly stadiums and sustainable tournaments are becoming priorities. Clubs are reducing carbon footprints, recycling, and promoting environmental awareness. Fans are encouraged to celebrate the game without harming the planet. Football may be about goals and glory, but it's also a platform to promote positive change in the world. Fun fact: e-football and digital expansion. Video games, esports, and digital football experiences are part of the future too. Games like FIFA and e-football allow millions to experience football virtually. Young fans can train their skills, manage teams, and even compete online globally. This digital expansion keeps football connected to new generations, blending technology and tradition. Even when played virtually, the spirit of the game, teamwork, strategy, and fun remains intact. Football as a global language. The beautiful thing about football is that it doesn't need translation. Fans from different countries celebrate goals the same way, cheering, waving, hugging. Players communicate through gestures, passes, and teamwork, even without words. Football continues to unite people, transcending borders, languages, and cultures. The next century will likely see football even more global, more connected, and more magical than ever before. The eternal magic of football. Despite technology, money, fame, and global reach, the magic of football will always remain. A ball at your feet, a team by your side, a goal to chase. Friends playing in the park, dreaming of World Cup glory, fans united in celebration, sharing passion, and making memories. The future of football is bright because it grows with humanity, adapting, inspiring, and connecting people.